Well, as I was saying earlier this morning about Cannibal Holocaust, this is actually part two to the video because I was trying to get as much into the last video as possible, but it cut off. So here I am again. Basically, what I was saying in my last video was that as they were watching the lost footage of the film crew, they were making comments like, oh, this is powerful stuff. This is really good stuff. I was sitting there the whole time like, are you kidding me? This is not good stuff. There is nothing powerful about this stuff. This stuff is shitty. This is shitty footage. How can you think this stuff is even remotely decent? I don't know. But they were trying so hard to make those film documentary crew sound like professionals. In the beginning, they were very cocky. They were like, "Oh, that's if we come back in one piece," foreshadowing, of course. And then they said, "Well, in 1950 something, this one film crew went to this area and they never came back." And they were saying, "Oh, these people were real jerks. They were amateurs. They never amounted to anything." And they were trying to make it like these were just premier, top-notch filmmakers, and nothing about these people made me think professional. If this were real life, if I were in a sociology class or some sort of cultural diversity class watching a film made by them, I would think these people are shit. They aren't very good. Even the stock footage of people actually being killed didn't look very good, constructed by them. And then you find out, of course, that it was all a show. They hired people to act. They actually killed people. So that's where the ideal of a snuff film comes from, where people are actually being killed for entertainment. And people have said that it's a myth. They aren't even sure if those snuff films are even real. But I have heard certain movies that have actually used bodies that were already dead and use them as corpse for the characters, something like that. They would use actual corpse, and I guess that's kind of controversial. But with this movie, it was like trying to tell me something, but then it was telling me another. There was no way those people were even halfway decent. And then, as I wanted to say earlier, where they were holding the native man hostage in the very beginning, where Professor Chaco and Miguel are wandering off into the Amazon, and Miguel has the native man at gunpoint, he turns to the other men and say, if you turn your back, this man will slit your throat. Something like that, making him out to be this, ruthless person. I'm thinking, he's not the one holding someone at gunpoint. He's not the one with a gun. So what do you mean he's going to slit your throat when you have a fucking gun pointed at his back? Like, nothing made any sense. And I think that was the point, the ridiculousness of all of these people who had these preconceived notions of these indigenous people, calling them cannibals, calling them savages. The scene where the native woman is being caught by the filmmakers. Alan is like, these are very dangerous people, so be careful. They're ruthless and they're cruel. They're cruel. And I think that was done on purpose to say, we can clearly see that that was not the case. And like I said earlier, these people aren't supposed to be politically correct. We are supposed to hate them. We are supposed to be like, you are awful human beings. These are shitty white people. And I think the film did a good job at that. I think when it came to how we perceived white saviors, this movie pretty much says, fuck all that. There are no white saviors. They are evil people. And we've seen it with the burning hut, the rape of the native woman, and then they get their comeuppance in the end where they are eaten alive. And the only reason why they were eaten alive was just because they did a shitty thing. What they did was so inexcusable, unforgivable, that those people were like, okay, these are bad people. We have to get our revenge. So they did something that to them was justified. They killed them. They, chopped their limbs while they were still alive. One scene that I did not really like, well, not that I didn't like, but it was unsettling, where Jack is the first to go. He's being strung up on the tree, and they are castrating him, and he is just in pain. His face is bloody, and they are recording it. And I believe Alan shoots at Jack, and Faye is like, "No, he's still alive. He's still alive. What are you doing?" I'm not sure, because at this point I was covering my eyes because I didn't want to see it. I was kind of like, ugh. Especially when Faye gets her head chopped off, and they are just like showing bits and pieces of her limbs. I'm just like, because it was just horrific. And you can see part of Jack's head just lying on the ground. It's bloody. I didn't really see it because, again, I was covering my face because I didn't want to see any of that gore. So Alan stays to film, and then Faye's like, "We got to get out of here." So then they turn to leave, and guess what? They are lost because their film crew, Felipe, who died because he was bitten in the leg by a poisonous snake, presumably, and they try to chop it off, but then he quickly dies. So because of the fact that their tour guide was not with them, that got them fucked. And people have interpreted as, did Felipe die, or did they kill him to have better footage, to make it exciting? And I want to say, honestly, no one in that group will be ignorant enough to kill someone who was their tour guide. Why would they kill them? They weren't that ignorant. I don't think anyone, with a brain cell would have killed them, just to make good footage. I don't think they would have killed a tour guide that would pretty much save their life had he had been there, just so they can have top-notch footage. Or maybe they were just that ignorant and just that horrible of a people who weren't very smart, that they just was like, "Hey, let's kill him." But I don't think they killed him on purpose, because if Felipe was supposed to be their top-notch tour guide, they would have kept him around. However, they didn't seem that heartbroken when Felipe died. They weren't like, "Oh my God, what are we going to do now?" But I honestly don't think they would have been that ignorant to just kill their best tour guide. But yeah, Alan is like, "Oh, we're circled, we're lost. At this point, they're dead. They're not going to get out of this." And then all of a sudden you hear Faye screaming, and Faye is being taken away. Alan is on the ground. You see the fear in his face. He's like, "Oh my God, we gotta save her. We gotta get out of here." And you hear someone that's like, we gotta do this for the sake of the film." And then this douchebag, the cameraman, I don't know, was it Alan? I don't know. Someone was filming Faye's rape, and then her being butchered. Filming the whole thing. Like, the reason why they were in that predicament was because of the fact that had they not stayed to film Jack getting eaten to the bone, literally getting his skin peeled off, getting his limbs taken off to the point where he's just nothing but bones, then they could have had a chance to get out of there. But like I said, these aren't very smart people. They sat there and made it like these were awesome and amazing, intelligent people, but then you realize they aren't very smart people. So then after Faye is dead, decapitated, then I think you can see the film start to shake because the person is trying to run, but then the person gets knocked down, and then you see Alan's bloody face next to the camera, and the end. And like I said, the people watching the film we were all watching the same thing. So they all had our reaction: disgusted, horrified, and was like, burn this footage. It is trash. It is not good. One thing I do want to say was, I wouldn't have said burn the footage. I would have probably released it and showed how shitty of those filmmakers they really were. But I think they were trying to edit out the horrible footage to make it like these were brave film crews. And that's why Robert, the professor, was like, no, we can't do that. That's inhumane. Look at the poor treatment. So then the man was like, okay, after seeing the whole thing, let's burn the footage. And I don't even think it was because of the fact that they saw the rape of the native woman and then her murder. I think it was because they just saw how butchered the film crew became. And then it was like, oh, we can't show this because it shows our little white hero friends getting chopped up. And that's why I think people were like, oh, okay, we can't show this because, it has these people getting killed on camera. Maybe, I hope it was because they saw the horrors of the rape and the impalement on the stake and then the tribe's ultimate revenge. But maybe, like I said, there wasn't really any likable people in this film. The only halfway decent person was Robert, and even he was benevolently racist. Like I said, as a horror film, I give it a 5 out of 5 stars because it does its job. It scares you. I couldn't really sleep. I wasn't really into turning off the lights after that because the images were just horrifying. As a well-made film, it was inconsistent. I think it was well made. I like the cinematography, but I just feel like even though the acting was pretty good, it was a little bit hokey in some parts. I feel like it just was written inconsistently. So maybe the writing was a little bit mediocre. So in that regard, I give this film a 3 out of 5 stars on IMDb, maybe like a 7.5. It's not a bad quality film. In a way, it's engaging. You are like curious to know what's going on, so it does compel you if you are someone that's not easily triggered. If you are someone who wants to continue watching to find out what is going on, then yeah, this film seems like it'll be for you because I'm someone who is not easily triggered. There are certain films where I just cannot watch. Again, Schindler's List and 7 Pounds. 7 Pounds was a very triggering film for me, and Schindler's List as well. So those are films that I won't be watching anytime soon. Maybe if I get around, 7 Pounds perhaps could be a film that I could watch. But that's just a very sad movie that I just don't really like to think about. But this film, like I said, is another one of those films where you can't just watch it all the time. Now, I had watched it a couple of times afterwards to try to get more of the information so I can do this review. But yeah, it's not a good film where it's happy. It's depressing. Makes you think life is horrible. So yeah, like I was surprised that there were quite a few brown characters in this movie, like the black guy, the assistant Miguel, and of course the natives. Which I still want to know how they got actual native people to play the parts, because like I said, there was one scene where none of the native women agreed to play the part where a woman is getting sodomized as her execution because of adultery. No one wanted to do that, so they cast a white woman for that part. And then one thing I didn't like, they portrayed the natives and all of the POC characters as very dopey. The assistant Miguel, although he was portrayed as someone who knew the parts of the Amazon very well, he obviously was someone who was experienced with indigenous people because I believe his character, I think he was supposed to be playing, um, I think he was supposed to be playing a Latino or a person from Latin America because I believe I believe he was supposed to be playing a Latino, and he obviously was portrayed as someone who knew the parts of the Amazon and who knew a lot about indigenous people because I think it was supposed to imply he was of indigenous descent. He was from Latin America, but that scene where he is in the water with the leeches and he's screaming and like he's just jumping up and down and his I think Chaco was also supposed to be Latino, but I think he was supposed to be like a white Latino and Miguel was supposed to be POC, or at least he wasn't a white Latino, even though I think both actors in real life were Italian. Of course, in the 70s and 80s, all of the Latino characters were played by white Italians, but they kind of like use that character as some sort of like comedy, and he's just sitting there laughing like, "Oh, leeches, ha 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 ha." I'm thinking your assistant is getting his blood sucked. Why is this funny to you? Like, I don't even know how they got the leeches off because cartoon like in the next scene, Miguel's all right, and I don't know why he was in the water with his whole chest out. He had a shirt on, but you see his chest, and I'm thinking this wouldn't have happened if you had buttoned up your shirt. And I think it was because of eye candy, because this Miguel character was pretty good looking. Like, I thought he was good looking. A lot of people, on the discussion forums of this movie said, yeah, he was probably the most good looking character in the film. And you see that he has his shirt off in quite a few scenes, and then you're just like, it's obvious that I don't know what the point of his character was other than to be eye candy, but how they like made this character was kind of like, oh, if he pulls this off, I'm going to buy him a whiskey. I'm like, so you were going to risk your assistant getting shot by the natives unless he pulled it off? That's what I thought, because Professor was about to shoot the natives because he thought that the natives were going to kill him, because that's the scene where Miguel was just standing there naked. And Chaco was like, wait a minute, if he pulls this off, then I will buy him a whiskey. Okay, what happens if he doesn't pull it off? He's going to die? Like, I just didn't like it because it made it like the white characters are somehow very intelligent. The dark-skinned black man, who I believe was, indigenous African, yeah, he was portrayed as, smart, but pretty much an equal to the white characters, just very, sure of himself, like, the savior of these more primitive native tribes. And, this movie was just very problematic in how the natives were portrayed and how the brown characters were portrayed. And, this is a horror movie by the fact that these are white people, or, these so-called, civilized people who think that they are superior to more indigenous tribes and indigenous groups. And, that's why I was scared, because this is real life. This is stuff that happens all the time. And you may not think that it's real. You may not think, like, how can you possibly get away with this stuff? But come on, there are actually people who are just that bad. So I'm done with my review. If you must check it out, check it out. I don't see why not. But, as someone like critiquing the movie, I feel that while it was an engaging film, it's not something I'm going to recommend just to anyone. unless you are into the horror genre, if you are into Italian horror, if you just want to be someone who's like, I gotta see this very infamous movie, I have to see it because it was banned in over 50 countries. This was a pretty, you know, scary film, and it was a pretty nasty film. It made um, the infamous video nasties in England, or like some part of that. So if you are someone that just has to see every movie ever made, especially the more controversial that it is, then yeah, check it out. Like I said, not for the easily triggered. Um, that's all I have to say for this review. I'm going to do my next review soon. So, goodbye.